convinced you that the government's in trouble, the state, the local, the water district, they need more money, they need more regulations, they need more taxes because they're bankrupt. When in truth, they own 78% of Xerox, 60% of Motorola, every major traded company, all of the Dow 30. You've looked at the Dow 30. What percentage of the Dow 30 in the aggregate do state and city and federal agencies own?
You're talking, if you look on an individual basis, stock by stock, composite government wealth right now is the market. We're talking probably about in excess of 70% of the ownership is controlled by composite government funds. The public is insignificant in the marketplace.
And you looked, and to use a case point example, the city of Manhattan. You've got those numbers there. I know you did today on the radio, and I, after the show, went and actually checked it out. It's right there. They brag about this. In 1989 or 1990, you looked at Manhattan, not just states with hundreds of billions. What did Manhattan have, the city of Manhattan?
On my progression after looking at the state of New Jersey, I looked at the state of New York. And the state of New York had approximately $535 billion. And then I got the city of Manhattan's report, which covered the boroughs, Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, and so forth. They had $1.2 trillion, more than the entire state had on their books.
And that's in cream. That's in private investments.
And also, a couple of years later, Manhattan was crying poverty and had a tax increase.
And then you look at the
bailed out by the feds, supposedly.
And you look at the so-called. Let's use another example for folks. Let's throw it all in their face. Orange County.
Orange County. You had a couple of slap-happy investment managers who were playing around with derivatives and got their fingers burnt. They lost $1.3 billion of the money.
Well, a county just with derivatives, the most speculatory, dangerous thing in the market, just $1.3 billion, just a county.
The derivative market, as said by Alex Greenspan several months back, he said he was concerned being that the derivative market was up to $80 trillion. And the government is the primary player in the derivative market. But Orange County attracted all of this attention. Now, one person happened to stumble across Orange County's comprehensive annual financial report. And he looked and he saw that they had $16 billion in profitable investments. They were only talking about their losing transaction.
But they couldn't control the media on that. It was out for a while that they lost $1.3 billion in a very speculative area of the market. But they had to have a tax increase, almost went bankrupt, so the people had to pay more, almost like that was done on purpose when they really had tens of billions of extra that was profitable in the market.
There's an economist by the name, and he owns a bank, Anthony Hargis, out in California. He looks at comprehensive annual financial reports, determines that local government's cash position, and determines how long could they operate existing from their existing cash without charging one nickel in taxes, fines, or fees. Now, in Orange County's case, when they were crying bankruptcy, they could have gone on for another 11.9 years, performing the exact same services without taxing one nickel before they ran out of cash.
And that's not taking into account if they invested the tens of billions of surplus dollars in that one county and then took the surplus of that and reinvested it. And if they didn't do that, they could have taken it and paid dividends, that's checks, to the property owners.
Well, the bottom line, to cut to the chase, is if the public at this point in time unifies with basic comprehension, if you capture 10% of the population with basic comprehension, you can administratively restructure government at this point in time to phase out all forced taxation in this country.
Well, Walter, I want to stop you. I want to get to that a little bit later, because for people that have just joined us, the audience gets much larger as the show progresses over 2.5 hours. I want to recap who you are, what we're talking about, what's happening, and why this is so important. Folks, I know when you hear about budget or money or taxes, you tune out, you're sick of it. It's been designed that way. You think government is bankrupt, in trouble. In truth, they are the most opulently rich and controlling class around. They are merged with private industry, and that's why the mainstream media won't even begin to talk about it. I want to briefly recap, Walter, exactly what we're dealing with here, and then I want to talk about the amazing solutions that you and others have and that will actually work.
Well, the bottom line is your listeners now know why Gorbachev went Democratic.
People think they're free and put a lot more weight on their back.
More money, more control.
And you talked about if the American people were a gerbil, what are we doing right now?
I always used to give the expression, the way the system works is they keep the chipmunk running on the treadmill, chasing the carrot. As through trickle-down economics, they provide just enough revenue to keep the chipmunk running at optimum proficiency as they tap off 80% of the energy produced.
And I also had my own little analogy, and I think I'm going to put an editorial on the website or maybe make T-shirts up of it, talking about the massive government, how big it is, what it controls, 70% of the market, 70% of the companies.
Alex, just one quick notation. I noticed 45% of the revenue is invested internationally. They get some of their best rates of return on the international companies. I went shopping for Christmas. Every item I picked up said made in China. You now know the reason for NAFTA, GATT, the whole 9 yards. The government funds are investing with the international corporations, producing the product at 10 cents on the dollar and selling it back at 40 cents on the dollar here in the States, accentuating their profits.
And we're talking about water districts, counties, cities, the states, the feds, Texas with a $435 billion surplus every year that keeps getting invested into the trillions. And they're telling you that they're broke, ladies and gentlemen. Walter, talk about how China and its 1.25 billion slaves fits into all of this.
China?
You were talking about the investments over there through the companies owned by the government.
I'm breaking it down. I just saw the composite government funds in their notes section. They usually authorize about 10% of the revenue invested with a group called the Asian Development Authority, and 10% of the revenue invested with the African Development Authority. And if you look at a comprehensive annual financial report, especially on one of the investment pools or one of the large government pension funds, it breaks down exactly where the money is invested, who's holding what, and the dollar amount. Everyone should get a copy of their state retirement fund for the state employees. It breaks down where the money is invested. And they'll see the majority in international stocks versus U.S. stocks at this point in time. The growth factor is more for international.
In fact, a lot of retirees and folks out there saying, hey, leave it alone. The system may be corrupt, but it's my pension. Explain that you have giant surpluses out of the pensions that are being invested that they'll never see.
Arizona, the total actuarial liability for all state retirees and participants in the plan for being 100% funded, all active employees and retired, required $14.5 billion. The current fund balance is verging on over in excess of $32 billion. The employees will never see that money and never benefit from it. The Arizona legislature a couple of years ago, being that the employers, the cities, the counties, the school districts, and the employees were contributing to something where no way they should be contributing one dime, and in fact they should have been getting substantial refunds back, they passed their own internal statutes to make the pension fund strictly participatory, requiring a minimum of a 2.18% contribution from the employee and the employer. So the government employees are getting shafted in many cases also.
So recapping, Walter, again, using the example of the comprehensive annual financial report for, give me a close shot, guys. Thanks. I want to say the crew's doing a great job. For 1999, and then you look at 1998, $435 billion surplus. Carol Keaton Rylander's own report right here, and then you count all the counties. What is it, 100 of them in Texas?
Get your hands on 1996. In the notes section, it shows the transaction the state government made for local governments.